recent videos have surfaced that have stirred outrage by art groups or Jewish groups or people sympathetic to Jews, of certain Muslim so-called scholars admitting as to what the end game of Islam is. The end game of Islam is world domination. There are only three options in their position. Either you pay the dhimmi tax, I forgot what it's called, but it's a certain dhimmi tax, that they will graciously keep you alive, do you a favor. The second option is to convert to Islam, and the third option is to be killed. And they say it openly. They say it. This is the way it is. This is the position of Islam, making the challenge to ordinary people, thoughtful people who might have thought that there is peace with Muslims, but the truth is there is no real peace with Muslims. If you are secular, you either will pay a dhimmi tax or you become Muslim or you'll be killed. That's what their intentions are. But there's something underlying that people do not realize. And this smug so-called scholar is very comfortable saying you're either going to pay the tax or die or become a Muslim. And my answer to this smug Muslim is, there is no reason why a thoughtful person would become a Muslim. In fact, there's no reason for Muslims to be Muslims today either. Anybody who knows anything about world history, anybody who knows the Bible, anybody who knows anything about the history of the Muslim movement knows that Muhammad was not a scholar. He was very, very literate. And the proof of that is, and I'm telling this to you after seeing, I read 29 of the surahs. I didn't go past the 29th surah, very simply because I tried to engage Muslims in their own Quran, but they refused. The only response I got from Muslims was that they would kill me. They killed me because I asked questions that they couldn't answer. Every time Muhammad quotes the Torah, the Bible, he makes myriads of mistakes. The only time he gets things correct to a certain degree is when he talks about what we commonly call midrashic interpretations. But the actual text of the Bible, the text of the Chumash, the text of the Pentateuch, the texts of the prophets, he makes multiple mistakes every single time he quotes a verse. And the response that you would probably get from the Muslims, I've seen it from other things, is that the reason why we have a different version is because of our hatred of the Quran. We hate the truth. Therefore, we changed our books. And this is a standard answer which is laughable, because we have two ancient translations that are not Jewish translations. One is a Greek translation, and Jews made that translation, but they made it for the sake of the Greek emperor who lived in Egypt, the Ptolemy. That's known as the Septuagint. That translation existed hundreds of years before the Common Era, almost 1,000 years before Muhammad lived. Then there's the Vulgate, which is also several hundred years before Muhammad, and the Vulgate and the Septuagint all back up the Jewish tradition, the Jewish verses. So I will tell my smug Muslim colleague, don't be so smug. The only reason why you talk that way is because you're too shallow and too afraid to examine your roots. You have to examine if your religion is telling truth or not, and you're afraid to. So therefore, you go on with a smug face and you say, "Well, we're a religion that's expanding, and we're going to take over the world." You may take over some of the world, but you're not going to take over the world, because there are too many people who know something, too many people who read, too many people who have evidence, who know that you're full of hot air. Not even hot air. Every single element of Islam is based upon Jewish teachings and some Christian teachings, and all of it is based on falsehood. Falsehood, lies, untruths. Muhammad was an avaricious, that means a person who desired other people's money. He was a pedophile, he was a sexual fiend, and he taught his people that a man's function is to express his sexuality with his wife. And that's it. The woman has no other function. This is, it's a backward, medieval philosophy that gained tractions. It was modern for the people in that time period. And there were people who later expanded on it and were philosophers and made the Islamic culture a very, very forward-thinking culture. But that culture died in Baghdad in the 12th century, 12th, 13th century. Today, Islam is basically back to its 7th century thinking, and there is no depth to it. The only depth that they have is their insistence on their tradition, which is a bunch of lies. I'm saying this not because I wish to engage in a debate, because they're not willing to make a debate. I'm saying this because people should not be afraid of Islam. Anytime you turn on the light, all the roaches and all the rodents start running away. You have to just turn on the light. Discuss what it says, not what they claim it says. And when you examine what it says, they themselves will be embarrassed. The problem is they don't want to think, and that's why they're teaching people to hate other people, to kill other people, because if you got them to think, they would leave in droves. As long as you have an unthinking group of people, those unthinking group of people are fanatics. But the minute you have people who think and become thoughtful and philosophical and try to understand the truth, then you have a different animal altogether. I'm still looking for a Muslim partner to look into Islam, and not to change its tenets and religion, but to change the harshness of it, to go ahead and explain in a different way, to say these things are meant to be figurative, not literal. And therefore, if it's not literal, then the jihad can be figurative. Then dealing with people can be figurative. We don't have to go ahead and have violent conflict that will destroy people, because the end result is going to be a war. It's only a question of time. Is it going to be in Europe, or is it going to be in America? Is it going to be with Russia? Is it going to be with the Chinese? Somewhere along the line, the Muslim determination to force people to become Muslim will backfire, and people will object to this. And when they do object, it becomes violent. And when violent comes, it becomes wars. And there is no question this is going to happen. The only question is when and how. If you want to avoid this, then you have to begin to look at the foundation. And maybe you have to reinterpret that foundation. The problem is, just as with Christianity, there was a Reformation, and that allowed Christianity to allow for progress. Islam has never had a reformation. Islam is still thinking in the 7th century. It's too bad. It's too bad for 1.5 billion people that they're so backwards. And they're not thinking, and they're not honest. But that's the reality. I'm not afraid of you, my friend. There's no 3 options. There's a 4th option. You realize it's a bunch of garbage, and you throw away the kafir, you throw away all of that. And you'll embrace a different philosophy. Maybe you'll embrace the Torah, maybe you'll embrace Christianity, maybe you'll embrace some other method. But there's a 4th option, my friend. The 4th option is when you look at the truth, and you see it's a bunch of lies.